before we start. It's so nice that the people can't smell when I fart in this show. Oh shit, we're live.
I was about to say, thank God I can't smell on this show.
Welcome everyone to the 10K Rum Podcast. My name is Amos Joseph. I'm joined by my co-host Brook Potter, who's in the UK. How's it going, Brook?
Amos, I am exhausted because we just finished Religion Zero. I feel good about that. That was a good show. We had a lot of interaction, a lot of feedback. I'm out here in Wales. We are 2 weeks away from supposedly semi-quasi freedom, which would be a drop from tier 4, probably down to tier 3 out here, which would mean the gyms could open and I can finally get back to the pub and I can, try and meet some girls and see what's going on. But yeah, that's kind of the only thing I have going on that's different from every week is we're closer and closer to the exit of this draconian lockdown. And beyond that, I have no snow. I'm in the middle of January. And since I've been out here in Wales, I've seen 5 minutes of snow and that was it. And I feel robbed. There's snow in Suffolk and different parts of England or Scotland has been buried. No fucking snow in Wales, man. That's pretty shit, man. What's going on with you, man, Amos? What's happening across the pond?
Snow.
Fuck you know.
We had a little dusting of snow yesterday, but we haven't. Snow for us came late. I think I've told people this, like day before day before Christmas Eve was our first real snow that stuck. There was a little snow around Thanksgiving, but it didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Yesterday I had a bit of a dusting, but we had some pretty crappy weather in regards to. So we had a thaw. So January, Minnesota always has like a bit of a thaw. Usually it's like a few days to. Well, in yesterday's case, it was just a 1 day thaw. Everything's wet, slush, ice, crap, all that stuff, and then within a day, everything freezes. Everything's slippery.
Sweet.
People's driveways, roads, city streets, stuff like that. Everything's just sliding around. And with my job involving, driving around and such and going to people's houses, it was just a lot of like making sure I don't fall on my ass, which I didn't, but it was it was not fun. Like there were driving the vehicle I was driving, there were driveways that I started to slide down on. I had to like make some quick corrections. But yeah, definitely interesting. Other than that, not too much. I know. Yeah, you were saying we did Religion Zero, talked about Dominion as well as some other topics within that. Not the voting system, since we're on 10K Rum now. And then touching on a little bit of the political side of like basically like Christians and Dominion and ruling whether in any different contexts like political, social, cultural, and such. But anyways,
yes.
Other than that,
not much going on.
Not really too much. I mean, we were gonna get into this partway through the show today. D&D last night I had, but that's not going to be part of the thing. It's just more
we'll get to that. But let's get the housekeeping out of the way.
Another topic within that we're getting into.
Yeah.
So before we get into, I'm just imagining Count Dankula. Before we get into the Mad Lad,
no, that series is a lot of fun.
Yeah. If you guys do appreciate the show, do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to us on our podcast, on our channel, and all that. Check out Tactical Soap, 10% off if you use coupon code 10KRUM. A little bit of that goes to us. Check out subscribestar.com/Schiller-Preachers to pledge a monthly donation to the show to support us. All the links are below, of course. And yeah, we are back to the regular show. So,
yes.
Which hot topic do we want to get into first? Because like we have a handful of topics we want to get into. Did you want to get into DC or did you want to get into?
I think let's get the politics out of the way. The odd thing that's going on is the massive troop buildup that's taking place in DC. for a supposed virtual inauguration of the most popular president in the history of the United States of America, which nobody's showing up to, but there are more troops there now than there are.
Yeah, they're trying to keep it like COVID safe and all that. I understand that.
25,000 troops to keep it COVID safe.
No, sorry. No. In terms of the virtual side of it.
Yeah, well, nobody's showing up, man. Biden had a stream last night. He got 1,000 views. I mean, nobody gives a shit about Biden.
Yeah. People got more important things to worry about, especially during COVID and all that.
Even if they didn't, they don't care about Biden. Nobody is listening to anything Biden is saying. But the troop buildup is very, very bizarre. Have you seen any of the pictures of it?
I saw the barriers they were putting up and such.
Yes.
20,000 troops, you said?
I think it's 20 to 25,000 so far.
What kind of troops? We're talking Army?
National Guard.
National Guard.
Yeah. And as you said, they're putting up the barricades as well, including barbed wire. I saw a picture where they were actually putting up barbed wire. And my perspective from the outside in is like, finally, they've caged up all of those fucking criminals inside of, DC. I think it's about time they did that shit.
The thing that I've heard is with that is, so the reasoning is they're responding to what happened on the 6th, because they think there's going to be an even bigger demonstration, so to speak, happening on Inauguration Day. So they're trying to prepare for that, which then ties into some other things that we'll talk about when it comes to censorship and all that I think is interesting.
Yeah.
But so they're trying to prepare for all that, and they're saying we're doing a small inauguration because we want a social distance. We're not going to have a big crowd and all this, and and so that's their whole reasoning. But I haven't really seen like in terms of the hyping, if you want to say, the buildup of something happening at this event. For some reason, I just don't quite see it.
I'm not
if
sure
there's going to be a thing that will happen. Is there going to be a bunch of, is there going to be a MAGA push of sorts?
No. In fact, the FBI came out and said there is no, any kind of protest that's being planned for Washington, D.C.
Yeah. And what's funny is how they planned the January 6th thing, which ties in the censorship topic a little bit.
Right. I mean, they got the BLM guy in he was arrested for that. And he basically confesses like, yeah, we came here to try and antagonize the MAGA people to get them to do something. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it was only BLM and Antifa people.
Yeah. There were definitely like MAGA people that got arrested.
Yeah, of course. Granny was definitely not Antifa.
Yeah. I was. There was a lot of crazy stuff with that. One thing that that was funny though was, and I'll quickly just drop this in there. So everyone's kind of heard about how Parler and Parler got taken down by Amazon.
Before we get to the censorship, I want to finish up on the troops.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the guys that I followed is Jack Murphy on Twitter, and he was, I think he worked in the DC cop area, and he knows people in, DC and like a couple of National Guardsmen and stuff. I think he was also in the military, so he's been kind of making calls. The thing about what's going on in DC, and even he's confused, is that nobody knows why these troops are there with full on military, garb and guns and everything. This is not like riot police with some tear gas and shields. These people are there like full on. I don't know what the gun is in the National Guard anymore. I don't think it's the M16, but full automatic weapons have been deployed, plus all of the barricades and barbed wire. And I think they've closed off pretty much all of the streets leading up to the Capitol building have been issued with checkpoints. So nobody is getting in or out of that area. And nobody knows why they're there. I mean, they didn't even set up any kind of camping for it. These people are sleeping in the Capitol building, right? So it's very, very bizarre. Very, very bizarre. They don't have any kind of resources there. There's pictures of like the congresswomen and senators walking over these troops that are sprued all over the Capitol building. Very, very bizarre. Now, I'm not saying that there's going to be any kind of fireworks come January 20th. some people suspect there might be. And I kind of hinted that that was a possibility, but I don't think it's going to happen. But if it did, that'd be a hell of a thing.
Yeah, I wasn't going to try to get into the censorship by itself. I was going to get into how. So the big claim was January 6th obviously had some planning from some of the MAGA people, some other groups and such. And they all tried to pin it onto places like Gab or maybe even Twitter and Parler.
Yeah.
But then Parler then gets this like sudden, essentially basically what they found out to be a contract breach from Amazon, kicked them off their platform. Which Parler is trying to sue them for, but they might not have enough resources to actually follow through with the suit. Anyway, so all this is happening, and then they're like, Parler, they don't moderate, and we don't like it when they don't moderate. And then it's like, but no one's talking about how Twitter can't moderate everything. Like Twitter tends to have a huge bias in moderation, because we've talked about how like you go look at parts of Twitter that we can't really talk about on the stream.
the dark side of Twitter.
You think you're in the dark web, but it's Twitter.
It's Twitter. It's Twitter. I mean, the Ayatollah of Iran is screaming death to America. You got Chinese officials basically talking about sterilizing.
You got beheading videos on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. And you got porn, like flat out porn is available on Twitter. All of
the legal and the illegal
type, if you know what I'm saying. All of that's going on Twitter. And the ironic thing about the Parler thing, and this is actually part of their defense, and it shows that this is bullshit, is Parler has no way to organize events, unlike Facebook.
They don't even have like forum type things. Like
they don't even chats. Nothing like that.
Do you know where these were actually organized?
They were organized on Twitter and Facebook.
Facebook was the main one.
The main one. But I mean, they coordinate with Twitter and they,
But Facebook didn't like own up to anything.
Of course. In fact, Twitter, I think Facebook, in response, because they took a huge hit in the markets. Twitter and Facebook, I think, lost like $50 billion worth of market cap as the price dropped after the banning of Donald Trump. And we'll get into that. But it's absolutely happened on Facebook. Right, that is where these types of conversations.
Facebook groups,
and nobody's calling for the banning of Facebook, or Facebook isn't being dropped from the app stores. That was all part of the Parler lawsuit. And ironically, AWS, Amazon Web Services, also hosts Twitter.
That's what they're suing them for like a conflict of interest and a contract violation, because Amazon in their contract is supposed to give Parler a 30-day notice.
30-day notice, yeah.
And they did no notice.
Like a couple hours, like 24 hours or 30 hours.
It was so like you're not responding to that in time.
Correct.
Oh yeah, let's just get a full infrastructure of servers to just switch on over. No. So it's funny how that kind of played out with that, and how they've kind of turned a blind eye to that. So you know what Facebook did do? Who they did go after? Ron Paul.
They went after Ron Paul. They went after the Walk Away campaign, which was a group of people who were part of various things from the Democratic Party all the way over to white supremacists, all sorts of people who found the courage to walk away, even from Islam, other things. That completely got nuked.
Basically, just these are things that have no real political leaning or biases, whatever. But I mean, they're mainly movements of people trying to dissociate from like extremist views.
Yeah.
And trying to like
come to some. Ron Paul is not even extremist, right?
Well, not saying for the walkaway campaign, but then Ron Paul, who is anti-war, anti the Fed.
Yes.
He's basically like the libertarian kind of hero for a lot of libertarians.
Yes.
He's not some neocon that calls for war. He's not some leftist that calls for big government and the banning of people. He is like, excuse me, in terms of extreme views.
Yes.
You would almost say milquetoast, but not really. It's extreme in the sense it's against the grain.
Yes.
But in terms of extreme views, it's just peaceful solutions.
Correct.
It's not some like violent whatever. No, it's just let's just be. It's kind of a kumbaya capitalism almost, like
Yeah,
or freedom.
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
And because if people want to go like shit on like Rand Paul, okay, maybe there's something to that. But Ron Paul is like way more like libertarian than Rand Paul, and just no, just ban. It wasn't a ban. It was like they limited function on his thing, and then their reasoning was violation of terms of service.
Yeah, which is
when they pursued what was violation of terms of service, because usually what happens is, oh, you're violating these rules. Here's a warning. Okay, you violated it again. Here's another warning. Okay, you violated the third time. We're going to do a 3-day ban, 1-day ban, whatever day ban.
Yeah.
None of that. It was just done. You violated terms of service. Which ones? You just did.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like those fundamentalist Christians that disagree with you and they throw the Bible and be like, you're wrong. The answer's in there somewhere, right? That's kind of what happened. And somebody else who got banned on Facebook was Tim Pool. Did you see that? Tim Pool, the milquetoast fence sitter, who's as like, well, he's not hard left, but he's like center left on a lot of policies. His videos got taken down and demonetized on Facebook. So, I mean, there is, we could get into why that is happening. But I think the most disturbing thing that has come out of that has been, of course, the deplatforming of Donald Trump, which is one of the leaders of the free world has been kicked off of, and I think I sent you guys in the chat the picture of all the platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, Shopify, Pinterest. I think it's like 6 or 7 different companies.
Websites you wouldn't even think Trump has a profile on.
Like Snapchat. Like who the I have a Snap. I don't fucking use Snapchat.
He's doing his
he's doing his dick jerk dance. Well, I mean, he's all over TikTok with those dances anyway. But yeah, that is a frightening precedent that has basically, and of course, Twitter is paying the price. They were basically in the shitter before Trump came on Twitter, so they're going back into the shitter. Facebook, I think they've acquiesced. I think they've actually reinstated it because the backlash that came from the world.
Oh, accounts that deactivated or left, and because okay, people leave these social media platforms. What's the big deal? Ad revenue, traffic. Yeah. A lot of these advertisers now can't pay Facebook as much because there's not as much traffic.
Yeah, exactly.
As you're scrolling, I think it's like every 3 or 4 spots on your newsfeed is an ad.
Correct.
And that's dollars and cents going to Facebook from advertisers.
Exactly.
And if the less the people are doing that, the more,
Yeah, but I mean, they've fucked themselves in terms of if they're going to do that to the president of the United States, who are you? Like, really? So their perception as being like a safe space and a place for that shit's gone, man. Like there is no redeeming that.
It wasn't even just like, okay, so they under their reasoning of banning Trump and all this such, like they try to incite violence. They're trying to, then they removed all the protesters that were posting videos and streams. It's like, okay, but then they kind of went beyond that. Then it wasn't even, it was like literally tens of thousands of people, like even people that are like friends of mine on Twitter who are just either like right-leaning or libertarian or just anti-PC, maybe had nothing to do with the protest, just get banned.
Yeah, I think a mutual friend of ours in Texas. I don't know if you know him. I know him. I'm not sure if you know him. But his Twitter, and he's nothing. He's an insurance. Is he insurance? No, he's like a healthcare worker, like dealing with Medicare. So he's like a frontline guy, helping people get their medical bills paid through Medicare and stuff like that, making some decent money. A nobody, gone. I mean, we don't know, a breach of terms of service. I mean, I'll grant it. I think he was kind of into the whole QAnon kind of thing, which I never.
Did you see the video of Alex Jones screaming at QAnon? Of course I did. I couldn't help but go, you're crazy when even Alex Jones is like done with you.
I don't know if you've ever read like stuff from the Bolshevik Revolution. There was a Yeah, the Soviet, so the communist takeover.
Yeah.
It's very similar to what Q was doing. I never really got into Q. Like a lot of my some more radical friends are like, yeah, Q this. I'm like, no. But what it reminded me of was this Soviet technique that was actually put out by the Communist Party. They created these personas. I think it was called the Trust, and the Trust was speaking to the people, feeding them this information about how there's a counter revolution. You know, they're gonna retake the state. You know, retake the things of power and restore liberties. And it was just a propaganda piece. It was actually put out by the Communist Party to quell the insurrection. When I heard a lot of this Q stuff, it's kind of like maybe this is kind of, you know, like a psyop, you know, trying to give people the idea that there's hope so that they can get everything else done in the background
or something.
Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, there's going to be a revolution, there's going to be a this and a that, and then, you know, Biden gets in and nobody bats an eye, you know. I never got into Q, but like you say, Alex Jones kind of dropped the bomb on that as well.
Yeah, it was both entertaining, but also kind of like almost a confirmation. Like, yeah, if Alex Jones is calling you out, you're probably a little bit off somewhere. Like, because people kind of said that, you know, people like to go back to Alex Jones and say like, yeah, he's more of an entertainer. Nowadays, and that's how I kind of see him. He's an entertainer.
He's
but then when he talks about his really crazy stuff, it's funny how a handful of these things he'll say is, you know, will actually have some truth to it. You know, the gay frogs, and such. Like,
Bohemian
now, granted,
Grove.
you know, the whole, Bohemian Grove, like that's been confirmed to a degree, but then, well, like if he, you know, obviously people, well, Sandy Hook, okay, sure, yeah. Dropped the ball on some stuff. Definitely got in some hot water. Definitely, and he got, you know, consequences for it. But yeah, him just screaming into the phone call like, "You guys told me that this was going to happen. That was going to happen. None of it came true. You know,
guys are full of shit.
QAnon. I've suffered you enough. Like,
yeah.
Done with you." And it's like, all right, I think we're done at this point. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So, and
I mean, just so people know, like I've heard a lot of the crazy theories, and okay, so I've heard a lot of the crazy theory. I'm not a big Alex Jones watcher. A couple of my friends, and like if I'm cooking something and I just want to listen to something, I might put it on in the background. I'm not really paying attention, sort of thing.
See, if you really think about it, no.
Yes, I am a gorilla.
I am 1776.
Yeah, the only time I really listen to Alex Jones is when he's on other people's podcasts. Like I'll listen to him on Joe Rogan and Tim Pool, sort of thing. The one thing that
attention points in the universe, and then there's these interdimensional child molesters. No, I'm just kidding.
So the one thing that he did say, and I kind of hinted at it at our last podcast, that I said, look, if there is going to be any kind of upset with the Biden administration inauguration, it was going to be a military action from military intelligence. And that was before the buildup of all these troops and all these other types of things. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen before YouTube, you know, and their Chinese-backed overlords decide to strike us down with wrath and you know, locusts and plagues.
My little red book to flash. We're okay. We're here. We're with you. No.
But if there was something that was going to happen like that, because there have been a couple of people have said the inauguration is going to be like an arrest fest. The guns are going to turn on all the politicians, and they're going to caught them all out one by one and basically military tribunal for treason. If that were actually going to happen, ironically, the setup is actually there for that. I don't think that's going to happen. It would be really amazing if it did. But yeah, it's the buildup is not, it's definitely not quiet. That's kind of all I can say.
Yeah. So, we kind of touched on the censorship thing a little bit. Do we want to go more into that?
I mean, there's a lot going on with the censorship. Do you follow Dan Bongino?
No.
Okay, so he's a commentator. He's like the number 2 behind Ben Shapiro in terms of conservative podcast. I didn't know much about him until all of this stuff on, but he's an investor in Parler. So he kind of gives the insight and kind of the behind the scenes of what's going on. And so for those who may not know, listing in the future, yes, Donald Trump was banned. He had an account on Parler. Parler was kicked off of all of the app stores by Apple and Google, which account for like maybe 90% of the app market. And then Amazon Web Services killed their services with like a 48-hour, 36-hour timeline, whatever. And right now, the president of the United States has no voice. And Dan Bongino is in the background, and he's talking about how not only are they kicked off of Amazon Web Services, they cannot get hosting anywhere else because all of the tech companies are pressuring these hosting companies. If you host them, we will kill your services.
Yeah, there's I was gonna, on your point about the president, I think he gave an address to the White House Twitter.
Yeah, so the day he was banned from his personal account, so real Donald Trump, he went on to the POTUS account, which is the White House account,
which got temporarily suspended.
And they deleted his tweet. And then he went on to the Republican, whatever his campaign party.
No, it was the Team Trump.
Right, the Team Trump, which is like his campaign.
That one got taken down.
He took that. No, that's beyond draconian. That is insane.
Oh, yeah, no, I get that. And then he went to his digital director's Twitter. Mm-hmm. Norby, Colby. Anyways, that got taken down too.
Yeah.
So then, I think then a couple of days later after that, then he put a official video on the White House Twitter.
Yes,
that stayed up.
Yeah, it's yeah. And again, nothing. He didn't incite. He was in all of the tweets. He was stressing peace. Law and order. There was no sign of any kind of incitement to violence. And even the FBI has come out and said the same thing, that there is no connection between what happened at the Capitol on January 6th and President Trump, even though he's been impeached. But we'll get to the impeachment eventually. But none of it.
First president to be impeached twice.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's the first president for a lot of things.
And he did it in one term. Clinton was served 2 terms and only got impeached once.
And at least he got a blowjob, so.
And a stain to prove it.
Yeah. What has been the highlight out of this? So Dan Bongino's talking about the problems. It doesn't look like Parler is coming back anytime soon. But this, of course, has triggered the mass exodus from social media. Mm-hmm. So Facebook is bleeding users. Twitter is bleeding users. I don't know any of the other big ones really. So things like Gab, 700% increase in traffic. I think another one that got is all of the alternatives to WhatsApp. So Telegram, Signal, 800% and 900% increase in traffic. So these are like all the alternative alt techs. Minds.com, that's one I've been involved in. Boom, explosion of people suddenly showing up on Minds. And now, as of today, and I posted this on my Facebook, Google and the tech oligarchs are now going after Minds.com, which they're going to try and put pressure on the ISP. They're going to hurt hosting and all this other kind of stuff. But it's a blockchain system. It really can't be taken down that easily. But the one guy that actually, he saw it coming. He was the prophet of the coming Armageddon of tech services. I think his name's Andrew Torber. He's the guy who runs Gab. He has all his own servers. He has all of his own infrastructure. Right down, I think he's even launching his own version of YouTube at this very moment. Mm-hmm. And what he did, which was actually quite brilliant, he backed up all of Trump's tweets on Twitter. He has a mirrored account on Gab, real Donald Trump on Gab, with all of his tweets, all of his videos, everything backed up right on Gab. He could move right in if he wanted to. That takes real foresight. That this guy, I mean, he's a religious nut. What's that?
Just to call up Trump, hey.
Yeah, well, he tried.
$2 million, pick it up.
I mean, it probably wouldn't hurt. But I mean, if the president jumped on Gab, that's game over. Because everybody would jump on Gab just to see what he's tweeting.
Gabbing.
So,
I don't know. Is that what gabbing?
I mean, it's take Pepe the frog, and that's the logo of Gab, right? So Gab is a frog, right?
Mhm.
So he's really trolling hard, and
Yeah.
he's made that free speech platform.
Yeah, that's the thing is kind of weird about these platforms because like it's. Did you ever hear like some of the first alternatives to Patreon that came out after Patreon was cracking down on creators?
On besides Subscribestar, yeah, there was Patreon.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was another one.
and the reason I'm bringing that up is it's both a good and a bad thing. So when it comes to these things, is you get these big platforms, big tech censorship kicks in, and a lot of people like kind of flock on over to alternatives. What tends to happen is some of the first, the more radical tend to flock there first. So those platforms kind of get not necessarily overrun, but definitely there's an overwhelming amount of free speech going on that you get a lot of riffraff going on. And the media tries to cling on to that and latch onto that and say, look, see, it's where the hateful people are. It's like, yes and no. Like, yeah, you're going to get a lot of the really crappy people that show up there because they can't, they're the people that cannot be on Twitter, even in the best of circumstances.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you rather, like, I think in terms of just the democratic, the marketplace of ideas and just being free, like we've talked about, like censorship only radicalizes that.
Correct.
Because instead of those guys hiding in rooms, talking behind the scenes, and we never hear about what's going on, and maybe they do something like shady.
Yeah.
Now they're out in the open. Now we can kind of like, it's not to yeah, challenge it or even excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
And not to promote cancel culture in the slightest, but this is a place where people can kind of like, okay, where people maybe decide to expose themselves, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm just not going to associate with those kinds of people. You can get a better perspective of like what is the craziest thing that's really out there. Like you and I have, being our exploration of the internet, we definitely get to hear some of the craziest stuff because we actually dig out to try to find like what is the real crazy stuff. We're not like we're not normies that are like, what? What's QAnon? What do they believe in? Yeah. Adrenochrome. What is this? Like, we looked that up and we're like, oh, this is hilarious. This is so ridiculous. Like, we're kind of like, this is the real crazy stuff. We kind of have a better sense of,
but
the big Overton window, so to speak.
I mean, to that point, they make it sound like, okay, if you go on Gab, you're just going to be inundated with, white supremacists and white nationalists and Christian propaganda. No, it's like fucking Twitter. You got to follow somebody, right? You got to follow them and they follow you. So you're going to build your audience, right? It's not like you automatically go there and the goggles come on and suddenly, you're doing Sig Heils and other shit that's not like brainwashing you. No, you have to look for it. You have to, if that's what you're looking for, you got to find it, right?
Yeah.
So the media push on this thing about, oh yeah, the extremists on Parler and the extremists on Gab and all that. It's a lot of nonsense. And your media has completely lost the plot. I mean, we known in the UK for years, there is no such thing as news. It's only, political propaganda. News equals propaganda. We've known that for years. The UK media is one of the worst in the world, least accountability ever. You guys haven't picked up on this yet. I think you're starting to, right? But they put out a letter after the whole incident from January 6th, claiming that I think the distribution company that handles like Dan Bongino, Ben Shapiro, I don't know if he does Crowder, but like those are the three names that dropped. I think in one of the Washington Post or the New York Times, basically said that the distribution company sent a letter to all three of them saying, you need to stop talking about the election fraud, because whatever, otherwise we will put your product under review or whatever the case, something along those lines. never happened. All three of them are on record saying we've never gotten any such letter. We've never gotten any kind of, response or anything like that. And we have a perfectly fine working relationship. Even Tim Pool thinks this letter existed. He's there talking about how these publishers and other things are trying to crack down on these speakers and stuff like that. But they're trying to normalize that thinking. Now, where we have seen it, which I think I touched on this either before the show or in Religion Zero, I can't remember when. The Senate right now, there are a couple of senators, probably of the Squad and AOC and these types, who are partitioning. Yeah, they call it the Squad, right? That are petitioning like a lot of the transportation companies, like Greyhound and I don't know, Express Bus, or I don't know what the brands are out there, and Amtrak and stuff like that. And they're demanding to know what is their policy on dealing with domestic terrorism. And to be fair, I don't think they have any kind of policy, but now they're going to be forced to make one. And what is a domestic terrorist in the United States? It could be whatever they want. They could basically say everybody who's a Trump supporter, or doesn't even have to be a Trump supporter. Anybody who did not support the president-elect can be classified a domestic terrorist.
Oh, I mean, there was a time, there's some people that I know in the Libertarian Party who were essentially being like, who have been kind of labeled in that similar sort of category, specifically like, your, I can't say the word, your big igloo boys.
Right. Yeah.
You can't really say the actual word because the word itself it's a normal word. What does it mean? It's like a dance or something. And it's not necessarily that I would agree or advocate or go along with them, but I've seen these guys in public. So what they did during the campaign was they actually served as security for Spike Cohen when he was, they were fully armed. They had like body armor and such, and they're just out there and they just, chill out and make sure everything's okay. Didn't have too much action, but it's just nice to have. And their group, they're not some like insurrectionist kind of thing. What they'll do is nowadays actually if there's like a local protest and it's something that they can agree upon, it's something in line with more libertarian views, they'll show up and sort of act as like the intermediary between maybe more peaceful left-leaning protesters that maybe don't believe in arming themselves. And they'll kind of act as an intermediary to like, we're just going to be here, and like if that, it won't kind of get swept under the rug as like an incident happened. Oh, something happened and someone was armed and a whole bunch of cops shot. Like, no. These are all guys that were licensed, owned, and trained to handle the situation. Yeah, nothing. No, that's not going to happen. But anyway, sorry. Mentioning them.
Yes.
Or saying you like what they do or agree with what they do.
Yes. Domestic terrorism.
You're a domestic terrorist. When I've never heard of a single case of any of them even coming close.
Correct. And this is why they went for Ron Paul. This is why, and I think the libertarians have been
because
naive.
Libertarians. Yeah,
because y'all don't understand. You're dealing with communist thinking, right? This is the communist playbook. If you are not for the revolution, you are against the revolution. That's the thinking.
I'll say this, and obviously there's groups of people within the MAGA base that are different. There were some MAGA people that tried to pin the protest on the 6th on libertarians.
Well, that would be downright fucking retarded. There's some people that I know. Alex Jones level.
There's some people that have a bet going on about who is inaugurated on the 20th.
Right.
And there's some people and there's one side still believes there's that chance that Trump is inaugurated on the 20th. He's waiting out on the bet.
100% impossible. That's all I can say.
Yeah, but anyways, so then we were so during this conversation, they're kind of going back and forth, who's going to pay up.
Yeah.
So the 6th came around, and then this person said, damn libertarians made me lose out on this money. And I was like, What? So then here I am posting the Libertarian Party saying we condemn any violence, using violence to achieve political aims. What happened here was totally not this. This is what this is, and all this stuff. Granted, some of the people in the Libertarian Party took the terrorism angle,
right?
Which is depends on you look at. Well, whatever. I don't necessarily agree. So, but then I was like, really? Yeah, it's those damn libertarian. Like, I'm looking at these people, like how they're dressed, what kind of things. I'm like, I don't see a single libertarian. Like, I didn't even see like a Gadsden flag anywhere.
Yeah,
I saw Trump flags and MAGA hats
and American flags and thin blue line flags. It's a stupid argument, and I said so. I think just after the election, I think we had that conversation how people were blaming the libertarians. You guys didn't make that much of a difference.
And now they're coming back around again and saying, oh, that's the libertarians. And I said, okay, if I took all the votes of libertarians and all the other third-party candidates and lumped all their votes and threw them all at Trump, according to the official tally.
It might have made a difference in Georgia, I think, which was pretty close. And maybe 2 states. I don't think it would have been enough for like Wisconsin.
But it's like, and we talked about, of course, but realistically, that's not how it is. A lot of those bases that vote third party are either non-voters or they would vote left or right. It would be split pretty evenly, left and right.
Oh, I think it's worse than that. I don't think it would have made any difference in certain states because of the shenanigans that went on.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Is like you can slice it a lot of different ways, and it's probably wouldn't have made any difference anyways.
I mean, to just touch on that, because we talked about the Georgia election last time, and I talked about how I was watching it, the 99% of the precinct, and then all of a sudden they stopped counting, and the precinct suddenly down to 90%, 88%, and all this kind of stuff. The Republican Party, with no understanding of what is actually going on in the real world, is blaming the Republicans for not coming out to vote in Georgia, and basically the Republicans have lost the Senate. Well, it's tied, so technically the vice president is the tiebreaker, and it's most likely going to be Harris. So technically, it's gone to the Democrats. This is not a good move for the Republicans to blame Republicans for not coming out. And I said, so you're trying to tell me that it's the fault of your voters? It's not Mitch McConnell, who was in charge of the Senate and killed the stimulus bill. It's not all the Republicans who refuse to fight, the supposed improprieties and fight for like election integrity. It's not the Republican governors and state senators who refuse to call special sessions to resolve any of these issues, or even the amount of Republicans that flat out rejected Trump and basically said, no, we're not supporting him, and they voted to impeach him or anything like that. It has nothing to do with the fact the Republican Party has completely abandoned their base. It's all the fault of the fucking voters.
Well, the Republican Party pretty much in the coming months is going to see a bigger and bigger rift between your establishment Republicans and your Trump Republicans. Well, Trumplicans? Yeah. I don't even know if that's the word, but your MAGA base. Yeah, the MAGA base.
I mean, the MAGA base is the Republican Party. It is the biggest block of voters for the Republican Party in the history of the country.
Yeah.
75 million people.
Well, voting for Trump and being a MAGA person are different, though. Some people just voted for him probably as a protest because independents voted for him too.
Sure,
and that's a big part. Like, yeah. And so a lot of people just probably voted for him just simply as a protest to Biden.
Sure. But but at the same time, I do think there's definitely a movement.
I think you can distill it down to at least 30 to 40 million people that are that fit within the broader like MAGA base.
It's pretty big because he's the first Republican president to actually bring people into the Republican Party. So the party actually grew under Trump.
And I agree. I'm just saying he
brought in gays, he brought in Latinos, and so I'm not disputing their protest voters, but the fact is he, apart from the improprieties and the funny shenanigans that went on with Biden, he is the second most voted for president in the history of the United States. You do not turn on those supporters.
Yeah.
If the Republicans are doing that, it's a death wish. You're done.
And you really got to look at it even too, like Trump isn't really a Republican.
He's not. He's not a Republican.
He was an old school Democrat, really.
Basically, from the 90s. But yeah, that the blaming of the libertarians, blaming the Republican voters shows a complete. If Mitch McConnell had put forward a clear bill of stimulus for the American people,
without all these poison pills in it,
without all the shit in it, instead of playing the politics, I don't think it would have mattered because of the shenanigans that went on in Georgia. But I think more of them would have come out to vote. I don't think the outcome was determined before the election was ever.
And now with the impeachment and the coming, essentially, I guess, hearing, trial, whatever it is, the conviction by the Senate, basically, that whole process.
The trial in the Senate, yeah.
Yeah. So with once that starts to play out, that's really where you're going to see, I think, an even larger split because McConnell has basically all but said he has all but said he would be okay with Trump being basically convicted.
Yes,
he hasn't outright said it, but he's basically like he's not taking any action to whip the party to vote against this.
He said, "Vote your conscience."
He said, but he would vote with Trump, because he's kind of almost expected at that point, but he's not really making, looking at the rest of them. And some people have said like, yeah, I mean, that's technically how you're supposed to vote. But at the same time, it's definitely indicative of a huge split happening in the party that is going to have consequences through the next, I don't know, 2 to 3 terms at least.
Yeah. I think
whether or not that's going to mean no Republican presidents, whether that's going to mean only left presidents, how is that going to play out in the House and the Senate? We don't really know.
We don't know. And if they don't fix the shenanigans that went on in the 4, possibly 5 or 6 states, it's not going to matter.
Prime time for libertarians to move in.
Well, no, it's not going to matter. The libertarians will never get a vote again. Republicans will never get a vote again.
We just got to get that 5%, man.
Yeah, I mean, which is nonsense because you'll never get it. The machines will just switch your vote. So the alternative is actually what Brian kind of mentioned it in the chat briefly there, is possibly secession. And there is a growing secessionist movement in Texas, in parts of Northern California, and Southern Oregon, and a couple other places as well that are kind of, they don't see the incoming administration as legitimate. So I know this year Texas is putting it on the ballot. People will be able to vote whether they want to, if Texas should be able to re-exert itself.
To vote, to talk about it, right?
Right.
To begin.
To ask the question, should Texas explore the option to return as an independent republic? It's not the Brexit vote. It's the question, should we have one?
Yeah, which is somewhat fair because you don't want to just slap that on there. Like there's steps to take before you have that because of the weight of a decision like that.
Correct. I mean, it took us 4.5 years. We had the vote in 2016 for Brexit.
But then, what was the whole process before that, though?
Right. So I mean, it was campaigning. It was Nigel Farage, who should go down in history as one of the greatest politicians in England in the history because he actually got things done.
But how long was the entire process of getting it into
it took at least, I think, 10 years. He's been campaigning since, I think, the late 80s. But he got his party together.
When did you guys join the EU?
Back in the 70s.
Oh,
back then, it wasn't the EU. It was the economic, the European Economic Area or something. It wasn't what it is now. It was a trading bloc. And it morphed into
the European Economic Area, the
EA,
yeah.
But you see, Nigel Farage actually managed to get the Conservatives to do something that they did not want to do. So he formed, at that point, it was UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, on the basis of having a referendum. That was like his primary thing. Then they started winning. They started winning locally, and then they started winning in the House of Commons. And the conservatives realize that the writing is on the wall. If we do not appease this group of people, we're done. We're out. So David Cameron, who was the prime minister at the time, said, we'll do a referendum, basically abolishing the UKIP party, saying, your big platform, we've adopted it, too bad. And then it won, which nobody expected, not even David Cameron. And that's what started the process. So in the same way, people are actually looking at that for Texas, not just in Texas, but for the whole GOP. So if somebody were to say, okay, let's start the Patriot movement as a party with the sole emphasis of reestablishing the tenets of the Constitution, right? Like a real kind of scale back government party. The Republicans are fucked because that's going to split the vote. They will never get into power ever again unless they adopt those policies and bring them back into the fold. So it's a political strategy, and Nigel Farage was brilliant for doing it.
Okay. Man.
So Texas might declare independence. What do you think? Let's move to Texas.
I've already considered you and I have had the conversation for a while, like that I should move to Texas. And when I've been in Texas, I've always really liked it because it's clean. The infrastructure is a lot better.
Yes.
The weather is a little bit different, but it's not out of the ordinary. Like I'm trading winters for summers, basically. What it comes down to. Mild,
a lot less snow.
Well, almost no snow, even in some cases. It just gets wet and a little cold.
Or you get like a little sprinkle. You get like a little icing on the cake kind of thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm surprised we're 50 minutes in here. But let's get into a little more lighter topic. Well, light, I guess.
Session is too heavy for you.
Not too heavy.
The break over the United States.
So I mean, on Saturdays, Saturday nights, everyone kind of knows I do my D&D with a group of people, and some of the people in there actually complain that I have too many dragons when it's literally called Dungeons and Dragons, but that's another thing. Yeah, I was basically playing as I kind of made the joke, I'm the George R.R. Martin, because I was killing off characters, like basically manipulating the motivations of the players to like, all right, I'm going to kill this person so you get mad enough that you're going to stay on track with the story. But anyways, so but one thing that came up, so we talked about how like before there was the new book Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which came out through D&D. It's every few months they come out with a new book. It's got adventures, new material. It's like an expansion pack, like with video games. And Tasha's Cauldron of Everything was kind of like reforming. What was it? You could have customized racial traits. So, orcs don't always have to take orcs or drow, or like all these different races that were considered like more on the evil alignment didn't have to have certain, or they just had certain like penalties. Like orcs would always have to take a -1 to intelligence because that's just how they were designed. So they were giving you like more customizable options. And then they were kind of reforming Tasha, who is this witch in D&D who used to be evil, into a more neutral character. Excuse me. So now there's going to be, I'll pull it up here real quick. Oops.
As if they could get any more progressive.
Yeah, so there's a new book coming out, and this isn't actually like a material book. It's called the Candlekeep Mysteries. So they say it's an anthology of 17 mystery-themed adventures. So in D&D, we have something called one-shots, which are just like one-off adventures you can play in one sit-down. They basically have 17 of these that are loosely connected to each other. You could just play.
Yeah.
So this is just a good, but there's no like reference to like more lore, more classes or whatever. So they created this, but then as you're looking at the cover of the book, so I'll pull it up here. I think I could stream this. Yeah. Come on, share screen. There we go. So this is the Dungeons and Dragons website. And as you look, can I make this bigger? Yeah. You see this adventurer behind him. You see this guy sitting down and he's looking at this book. So Candlekeep is basically this fictional place in the world of D&D where a lot of these mysteries and things happen. It tells you, different adventures. There's an alternate cover to the book. But this person sitting down is I don't think that maybe they're in the wheelchair, but in the book they're going to have wheelchair accessible adventures.
Yes.
Dungeons, because part of Dungeons and Dragons is dungeons.
Yeah.
And now dungeons will be ADA approved. Now we did talk about the whole wheelchair thing, I think, a little bit ago. Like there was talk of there were some companies that designed the miniatures, like the little figures you can get for your character, to have wheelchairs.
Yes.
And they thought it was this huge leap in progressivism and it's inclusive and all this stuff. And I thought, okay, like I've watched anime, and anime tends to be less prone to PC stuff, like by a long shot.
Yeah.
But I've watched anime where there's like characters that were in wheelchairs, but the wheelchair was part of like their abilities. They had special powers and all this stuff. And it was actually really cool. Like they could actually match up with people who were, able-bodied, 2 feet, 2 legs, 2 arms, the whole thing.
Yeah.
There was even another character that that didn't have a blower body. He had like a pole for like a foot. He was, because a lot of his stuff had to do with like spinning as a top. Anyways, that was cool because it's part of the story, and then it's like a subtle way of introducing, quote unquote, disabled people into the show when they're not really disabled.
Right.
So, but here we are, where you have adventures with monsters and dragons and evil wizards and magic and all this stuff, that can accomplish great things and wondrous things. And you have these evil guys that are designing dungeons with treasures and traps and all this, but wheelchair ramps.
Oh my God.
And I'm thinking, okay, unless there's a really good reason there's a ramp, I don't know why he would this will teach him. I'll put a ramp here. Like,
how does that even work? I mean, do you even need to say that? Do you need an entire book to come out and say, look, the dungeons have ramps now?
I mean, I don't know exactly how it, but like, because the book hasn't come out yet, so I haven't looked into it.
We don't know exactly. We're speculating.
But this is the whole thing: is wheelchair. And then some people tweet. So our friends over at Masculine Geek tweeted about it, and I think even Rollo Tomasi was getting in on it, on talking about it. And I said, "But what if it?" And I just dropped a comment. But what if it was a magical wheelchair, which is actually fine? Yeah, there's that.
Fly or hover or something,
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. But then it's just normal wheelchair. Like you've got this guy that can cast spells that can cure any disease, cure any ailment, cure anything.
Yeah.
While he's sitting in a wheelchair.
I mean, have there been prisons that a character couldn't get into? It's kind of that's kind of my thinking. Right? You create this paradigm to solve an issue because there aren't any physical. There's no physical door, right? It's all the imagination. So you're basically saying that this was keeping people out of the prisons and the dungeons and stuff. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and I've always been into, like, this is what I tell people is like D&D is a world where you get to be a character that is like your best self or a
Sure.
version of your best self. Or in some cases, it could be an exploration of like your worst self if you want to play
Sure.
like an evil character or something. Like, how fucked up can you really be in a campaign? But
Sure.
if your best self is having your full capabilities physically as a person. Now, if you're a wizard, you're not going to have strength, but you can still walk. You
Yeah.
can still run. And this is not to say like, don't have wheelchairs and do it still comes, but it's two there's two sides to this. Do whatever the hell you want in your D&D campaigns. You want to make ADA, compliant dungeons. I have no problem with that. You know,
Yeah.
if someone asked me they wanted me to do that, I would do it, but it would be there'd definitely be like an oddity to it. Like, why would this evil wizard that made this dungeon like
Put it
here's
on
these
ramp.
steps and then there's a ramp? It's like, I mean, maybe it was for hauling stuff, like for his minions to haul stuff. I don't know.
I mean, were there a lot of people who were saying, "Oh, I can't get up these stairs. I'm disabled," and like, was that ever a problem? Was that ever something that had to be addressed?
I've never heard of that. I mean,
I can't.
even people in wheelchairs are like, I'm playing a character that can walk.
Yeah. I mean,
There was
it doesn't seem to serve any purpose apart from virtue signaling. Like, oh wow, look how inclusive we are.
yeah, because like you
fixing a
could
problem
like
that
no one
exists.
told you couldn't,
Yeah.
but no one told you had to as well. And this is the thing is where it kind of throws that in. Like now we have like, I mean, instead of rolling for strength to like run down some stairs, do you have to roll dexterity to roll down the stairs in a wheelchair? Like,
Yeah, they are trying to fix a problem that I don't foresee existing. Right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the person to say? Okay, let's say they're being thrown into the dungeon, and what are they going to say? I can't get in there because I'm in a wheelchair. No,
I mean, if we want to be ageist, like, are we going to have some like magical life alert? I've fallen and I can't get up. Pushes the rune and someone calls them or something. I mean, yeah. I don't know if did you ever watch the movie or heard of the movie Spy Kids?
Yeah. With the grandfather and the mom, and the
Yeah.
grandfather had like a spy.
So it was like a whole family of like
wheelchair.
kind of spies and stuff. But the grandfather was in a wheelchair.
Yes.
And there was one, so there was there was like a bunch of these movies. So Spy Kids 3 was a 3D movie. It was like the bit when 3D
I
really
saw that
took
on the
off.
plane. Yeah.
Right. So there's a scene where he gets these like power legs or something. He gets this
I
full
remember
suit
that.
and he gets legs and then he could like jump and all this stuff. And they have this whole thing where it's like, yeah, he gets it in the game. He kind of has fun with it. He gets to be like cool grandpa. But at no point does he turn it into some like, oh, woe is me or this. He appreciates it. You see a scene where he's like, I get to walk. Like, I haven't been able to walk on my legs in a while. He appreciates it, gets to enjoy it. But outside of that, it's not some like, this is no one really made it like an inclusive thing.
Yeah.
It was just like a character gets to explore something in a special way in the show, in the movie, to make it just to move the plot.
Yeah.
Unless the wheelchair of your D&D character has some real plot relevance that makes it a good story,
Yeah.
it's just a virtue signal. It's just a symbol for your ego to be like, oh, I have an ADA. I'm still just boggled by an ADA compliant, dungeon. Like I've played these where it's like dungeons with like slippery oil and fire hazards and all these things, but there's an on-ramp there for wheelchair. Like the person who constructs a dungeon is trying to kill you.
Yeah. He's not exactly. It's not the Ritz Carlton. It's not. It's not meant to be a luxury hotel.
Yeah, he's trying to kill you. He's trying to challenge you. He's trying to give you like a run for your money to like be absolutely beat the shit out of before you reach the bad guy. But no, he's like, but I gotta, So, yeah, it's interesting. And of course, as we go forward, there's probably going to be so many more things now. Like ever since D&D started taking sort of the woke angle, the virtue signaling angle, you know, there's been talk of all new books will have more new material, new ideas they're kind of putting out. And there's talk of reprinting old books.
Mm.
I think there was one I showed you. One of the editions of D&D had what was called Dungeons and Dragons Oriental Adventures.
Right.
And
they want to change the name.
No, they want to basically disassociate. Like that's not they don't want to consider that an official material anymore.
Oh, okay. So they wanted to kind of disown, erase the past.
Yeah.
Very communist.
Very, we must remember, like, this is kind of a real problem. We need to remember history. We need to remember, all these things. We got to make sure people know about, whether it's the Trail of Tears, whether it's, the Holocaust, whether it's even, racism and slavery in the U.S. We have to remember all that. Until we make a book that we don't like, we got to forget about that one. Like,
it's ridiculous. I look at what's going on with you guys with all of these companies. It's like, holy fuck, man, the communists fucking won. Like, what the hell? Where did all this shit come from? Because they're doing all of the same stuff. They're erasing the past.
I think this is just, like I've said before, this is kind of like that that pendulum swing, that the dialectic of just
sure
you take 2 steps back before you take 3 steps forward.
Yeah, the only recourse you guys have is you'll have a First Amendment and a second. If this were to happen, because we've seen it all over the world. When this kind of stuff happens, and they start erasing the past and doing all this different kind of stuff and trying to rewrite history, it's time to get out. That's generally because the people can't defend themselves. You guys are a little different. I don't know how this is going to play out, but it's communist playbook 101 in all of these companies. So yeah, it's a shame. D&D has a very rich history and it's what, 50, 60 years that the company, the game has been around. Was it in the 80s? I thought it was longer than that. Okay.
40 some. No, yeah, 40, 50 around there.
Yeah, it's been a while.
70s is mid 70s is kind of when it came out. I think.
Possibly.
It really took off in the 80s.
Yeah, so it probably came out in the 70s, took off in the 80s. It's a shame. It's a shame that they're selling it down the river for an ideology, which doesn't.
And there's another thing. It's in general too. The community really has this like trying to rewrite history in a lot of ways. Yeah. Or trying to focus on the negative aspects rather than the positive things. So they'll look at so for example, Gary Gygax, the creator of D&D. A lot of people honor him and say, his contribution, his him creating it, like great idea, genius, whatever. They play this all up, and people who are even along the more mainstream sort of progressive angle of like part of the community, which is really the mainstream of it. There's a guy, Joe Manganiello. He's married to Sofia Vergara.
Okay.
You know who that is?
No.
She's this like pretty hot Latina actress. She's married to this guy. They're like basically mid to low B-list actors.
Okay.
So he is like this prominent person in the D&D community because he's in Hollywood. Like he's the guy that runs the Hollywood D&D game.
Right.
That has some guy, was it The Big Show from WWE, one of the writers for Game of Thrones, Vince Vaughn.
Yeah, I know who Vince Vaughn is.
Yeah, they're all part of this D&D game he runs.
Cool.
Someone did a whole video. Anyway, so he has like a dungeon in his house where he plays D&D, all his games. He calls it the Gary Gygax Memorial Dungeon.
Right.
So he honors this. He has this. Whereas the rest of the community kind of just, every time they look at Gary Gygax, they go, oh, he was a sexist. He was a misogynist, because he had more old school ideas in the game. Like he would actually have differences between the sexes in the game.
Right.
He would actually, he also had more Yeah, that was one thing that people really focused on was he had some almost commentary in his materials about women that people
Right.
didn't like.
That was the 70s, man, you know?
Yeah, 70s and 80s, but they always try to hold that against him instead of like yeah, you can look at that
Yeah.
if you want to, but they kind of hold kind of like fuck him. It's like, dude, he freaking like created this game that you play right now.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that. And this is I'm noticing it more and more. Because we see the same thing with Star Trek, trying to basically screw over Gene Roddenberry's vision. You see the same thing with Star Wars, where the new movies are basically trying to shit all over the past. Fuck, we even seen now where there's a petition right now for people to remove Donald Trump from Home Alone 2, where he has like a brief cameo.
I thought that was a bit of a prank or a troll thing, though.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. So, but this is.
I swear I thought that was like a Babylon Bee article or something.
I know. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a real petition to do it. But we saw this with the pulling down of the statues. This is an ideology that seeks to destroy the past, and nothing is going to survive. Nothing will survive, because if you knock out all the foundations, that's it, right? That's what they want. But yeah, it's pretty messed up, man. What I see going on, I was like, Jesus, I didn't realize it was as bad as this.
Yeah. Trying to think here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some whole genres of the nerd sphere, the geek sphere, just completely overrun with
progressivism bullshit.
Progressivism.
Yeah. Doctor Who is on that altar that died. Have you seen the WandaVision? I haven't started that. That's looking pretty weird.
Well, it's apparently good, but I mean, everyone says it's good when a show comes out.
Yeah, you didn't see Wonder Woman 1984. You kind of told me that.
Yeah, I hear it's just bad. Like
It's
the first one. So the first Wonder Woman I hear was good. I still haven't seen that.
You said, no, okay, so that's worth watching. I quite liked Aquaman as well. No, it's not great, but it's a fun movie. But the first Wonder Woman was the best of the DC EU films.
Better than the Justice League thing?
Oh, Justice League was a mess. It was
Batman v Superman.
Let me preface, right? I'm not a big comic book like diehard fan, right? So I'm not one of those people. I'm not that for Star Trek, Star Wars, no sci-fi. I'm not heavily invested. So a lot of these are like I could switch off my brain and be entertained. So Batman v Superman is like, all right, it's kind of cheesy, but all right, I didn't mind it. Justice League, yeah, it's all right. I'm looking forward to the Snyder cut because that was part of the problem is that Josh Whedon came in at the last minute. But Wonder Woman was a hit. They did Wonder Woman and they did it well. You know, they didn't emasculate all of the men. It was actually a very good team movie and it played out really well. So if there's any to watch, that's the one to watch. I watched the second one, and let's just say it did not live up to the first one.
Yeah, I saw some funny things about how like the physics was really dumb.
The physics was dumb. The editing was off.
Like her lasso of truth could just like extend miles. And then in one scene it could just go like ridiculously far. In another scene it was like too short or something. And it was just like
No, they didn't have any of that. There's a lot of problems with the film, but I'd wait for you to see it before I say anything. But the one thing that I did not get, everybody was screaming and yelping about how the enemy, the bad guy, was supposed to be Donald Trump. I didn't get that. I looked at him and it's like, so that whole hype. I mean,
you definitely, you're getting some media now that will try to like push, kind of they're like it's Trump but not Trump. Like they're like, oh, it's not really Trump.
No. I've seen Trump done, like in Doctor Who, there is a Trump character, and you could see it's like a direct parallel.
But that's what I've seen. What I'm getting at is, there's those where they try to play, oh, this isn't Trump, but it totally is.
No, but that's the difference. She's saying no, it is based on Trump, and it's totally not because the character.
Oh, okay.
there really isn't any. It's the complete opposite of him. He's not like that. He's not weak. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely, if you're gonna watch it, Wonder Woman is very good. The first one, second one is absolute garbage, and these franchises are being killed by this progressive ideology.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could probably briefly get into what saved the Star Wars franchise, which was The Mandalorian. Did you see that?
Yeah, so because of that, there's been a push to reboot and act like the sequels didn't even happen.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that before. That was from the Ahsoka episode. They wanted to use the whatever, some point with space and time and the Force meet, and basically wipe out the sequel trilogies. But yeah. What did you think of the ending of the Mandalorian series? So this is spoilers, everyone. Spoilers. Right, because we're late to this. We were supposed to discuss
Luke
this at the end of last
Skywalker.
war. Yes, Luke Skywalker.
So, first off, shitty deepfake job.
No, you gotta, Amos, you're killing it. You're killing it. You gotta.
I am killing it.
Yeah, you gotta work people into it. So you're watching the show. You're watching the show. And there's a scene where they're all kind of trapped, and there's these mechanical armies coming to kill them all.
Whoa! Now you're getting ahead of it. So
how far back you want to go? You want to go back to season one?
So Boba Fett jumps in, and he's helping the Mandalorian because the Razor Crest got destroyed. The Razor Crest being the Mandalorian's ship gets destroyed. Yes. So they have this whole plan where him, Boba Fett, and Boba Fett's little helper, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Bo-Katan and those Mandalorians, they have their ships. So they have this whole ruse where like we're gonna make it onto this cruiser, the Imperial cruiser that Moff Gideon is on. We're gonna get in there and we're gonna take it over, and then we're gonna save the kid.
Yeah.
And then Bo-Katan wants to get her dark saber back too.
Saber, yeah.
So they get on there, and then he activates the dark troopers, which are basically troopers they're droids. Yeah. They're battle droid troopers. I kept thinking like the whole thing with the trying to get the midichlorians into them was a thing or something.
That's something that's in the books. I don't think that's come out quite yet, where they actually make droids that are force sensitive.
Well, and then you saw those like creatures that they were like trying to grow on that one base, but
yeah, it's possibly Snoke. Or Snoke, whatever the fuck it is. Yeah.
Snopes?
Whatever the fuck it is that. What was the body?
Snope says this is false.
It's Snoke.
So, yeah. But so they're doing all this. They get on there. They kill a bunch of stormtroopers and such. Moff Gideon tries to unleash the droids, the dark troopers. Excuse me. So, the Mandalorian event actually manages to shoot the dark troopers out into space, but then they come back and stuff, but a little later. So they basically get to this point where they're on the bridge. They got Moff Gideon trying to fight him and such. There's even a scene just before where the Mandalorian is fighting Moff Gideon with his darksaber using a Beskar staff or something.
Spear.
They're fighting and stuff. He, trying to save little Grogu, or Baby Yoda, as everyone likes to call him. And then they get to the bridge where they have Moff Gideon, but then the Dark Troopers come back.
Yes.
They fly back to the ship. They break in. They're gonna go in there and basically kill everyone except Moff Gideon because he's in control of them.
Yes.
So you hear them outside, doing their just this punch, trying to punch through. And they're like, oh, a ship's coming. Because on the bridge, they see all this. Like, a ship's coming. What is it? I'm like, what? Just this X-Wing all by itself. Just flies by. And you're looking, you're like, oh, back up from the New Republic or something. But then it was because some people saw it, they didn't even think. They're just like, oh, an X-Wing. Just one?
Well, no. So that was me. So when I saw that scene, it's like one X-wing. Okay, that's just one. And then when the X-wing flies in, it's like that's kind of strange. I was like, no, they're not. No.
There was talk of it. Like, because
Yes.
people were like, okay, Grogu reaches out into the Force trying to reach a Jedi. Who's he going to reach? Someone was like, oh, he's going to reach Mace Windu or something.
Right. I said that in the last one. Yeah, that was a possibility.
Because there is something about how Mace Windu is maybe alive.
Yeah, I think we talked about that he could have survived from what was it?
Yeah, there was like some artwork and stuff of like basically like a deformed face or something. But
yeah.
No, it wasn't him. So then they
so the X-wing lands and the Dark Troopers stop punching. Like they detect a bigger threat.
That's where you think maybe there's like that Force sensitive part.
Yeah, that's something the Empire is working on. So they stop punching, and you see this character come out in a black cloak from behind.
So everyone's like, okay, who this?
Who is that?
And then
Grogu is like sensitive and
reaching out.
Yeah, somebody's coming. It was brilliantly done.
Yeah, and then you see green saber.
And then all of a sudden, you see the green lightsaber.
And you're like, oh, it's a Jedi. Still not exact. But then this is where I
caught it immediately.
Well, this is where it was absolutely confirmed. I was like 90% sure.
Yeah.
Was the glove over the right hand.
Right. In the next scene, so when I saw the green lightsaber, because that was the staple, was he had the green lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
So the minute I saw that, I was like, holy shit, it's Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I saw the glove over the right hand. That was because that's his robotic hand.
His robotic hand. So when there's the next scene, he's slicing through the Dark Troopers in, I guess, the storage bay or whatever on his way to the bridge. And you can see he's got one glove on one hand and he's using the Force. And it's like, it's only on one hand. It's like, holy shit.
And this is well, technically he can use the Force with either hand.
Yes, I know, but I mean, I'm just saying he's wearing gloves on one hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I like too is they give him like this Luke Skywalker is the proper amount of like Force use.
Yes.
Because in the original trilogy, the Force was very like just with the special effects that they had.
Yeah.
They couldn't really do much because then because it was only in the prequels that you could see the full range of the Force, the jumping, the kind of moving quickly, all that stuff, the push, the pull.
Yeah.
The lightning.
It wasn't as back then. There wasn't as much coordination. The fight scene is kind of wild and crazy, and this was done very, very well. And he even did like the signature move from Anakin, which was to like block something from behind his back. That when I saw that, I was like, oh, it's definitely Luke, because the only other place we've seen
some people were like even doing side-by-side comparisons with Anakin's moves and Luke's moves.
Oh, I didn't know that, but at that moment I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, I could feel a million Star Wars geeks just like coming in their pants. Like the orgasmic joy that is being experienced because of this moment was probably galactic in proportion.
Yeah. So then he comes through, kills all the Dark Troopers. Some of them he slices, some of them he like just crushes by simple use of the Force.
Yes. Well, one of them, at the end.
Huge flex on them.
Just like his dad. And that scene coming into the bridge, like there's a bunch of Dark Troopers there. It's the Rogue One scene with Darth Vader. At the end of Rogue One, he gets a corridor scene, right, where he's going through and he's crushing the rebellion troops. So Luke gets his corridor scene just like his dad.
So then they let him in, and then he like removes the robe to show his face.
Yes.
And it's Luke Skywalker. Oh no, really?
Yeah.
Worst deep fake ever.
Yeah, I don't think they used the deep fake, but they used something else and it was terrible.
Because someone,
like
some people just like independently did a deep fake.
Yeah, it was much better.
Way better.
Way better, yeah.
Like, what the hell is this? But
I mean, to be fair, the fans didn't care. I didn't care. It's
Oh,
like, all
yeah,
right,
no one really
looks,
cared. It was
it looks bad, but it works. It
if you
works.
rewatched it a few times, you probably kind of like, okay, could have done it better.
Yeah.
So then there's that whole thing where, I'm a Jedi, and they're talking, and then he like, he's there to take Grogu, and Grogu's looking for permission from the Mandalorian, and he's like, he needs your permission, and then he like picks him up, and Grogu kind of reaches up to touch his face, and it's his helmet. So then he just says, fuck it, and just takes his helmet off, lets him touch his face, and it's just this whole tender moment. And
then the tin can shows up.
The tin can?
R2D2.
Oh, yeah, and he's like
pure fan service. Pure fan service.
He does interacting with Grogu because it's like lovable characters interacting with each other. That's kind of that thing.
Yeah. But the theory is that he actually knows Grogu because he would have been around at the time that the Jedi Temple was there. So, and R2D2 was the only one who didn't have its memory erased, apparently. So he might have recognized it.
Yeah. So they're, doing that whole thing, and then he then Luke takes Grogu, and he's going to go train him. And then that's
the end.
Yeah, because you don't find out if do they leave that? You don't know if they leave that cruiser or anything.
No, that's going to be season 3.
Luke just up and leaves.
Yeah.
Takes Grogu, and now, the Mandalorian has no ship. There's tension between him and Bo-Katan over the dark saber. They still got Moff Gideon to deal with. So people were confused about that, the dark saber thing.
Yeah, I heard there was something with the cartoon that I didn't follow. So
in the cartoon, anyone could just have it.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But then here it's like, oh no, you can only win it. So so if they're gonna retcon it and say you can only win it in battle and you can't yield it. So what does it mean if the Mandalorian, he doesn't want it, but he has it by tradition or whatever?
Yeah. Well, technically, he's the king of Mandalorian. Yeah, he's the king of Mandalorian. Well, whatever. He is the Mandalorian. But they'll explore that in season 3. That is because I think you and I were talking about this early on, that once Grogu is gone, it's no longer the same. This was a man and his dog kind of story. It's kind of the man and his pet. Now that he's gone, the dynamic is not going to be the same. So,
there's talk that there could be some reason why they would reconnect in the end.
Well, what they're doing is obviously there's going to be a whole bunch of new Star Wars series. So they're doing, as I said, Ahsoka. They're doing was it something of the High Republic? No, that's a game. Anyway, they're going to do a whole bunch of these things, possibly even one with Luke Skywalker, and it's all going to converge into a Endgame type finale for all of them. And Grogu,
is there going to be another spin-off show called Grogu and Friends or something?
They want to do one with Luke and Grogu. They want to do one with the two of them training in the temple. And there's questions of whether they're going to keep the deep fake or they're going to bring in Sebastian, what's his face from
Stan.
Stan, right? Because
he's the guy who played the Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
Bucky.
Yeah, from Captain America.
Yep. Maybe some extra makeup to make him look around the same. The hair and all this, but yeah, I'm watching that, and it's pretty. Excuse me, it's pretty interesting how that works. So anyone who's watched the sequels, and is spoiler if you haven't, but whatever. One sec here.
Gesundheit.
Excuse me. So there's a whole thing. So the explanation in the sequels of Kylo Ren, Luke Skywalker. I don't know if you know about this. So Luke Skywalker in that timeline basically created a new temple, raised a new generation of Jedi.
Yeah, I saw up to the Last Jedi. So
yeah, and him and Leia got to do some training and stuff.
Yeah.
And then raises Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren basically turns to the dark side, kills everyone.
Yeah.
Someone thought, what if Kylo Ren killed Grogu?
Well, that was the theory, because that's what kind of shit on it a little bit. So it was brilliantly shot. Okay, the CGI was not great. It's very touching and it's fan service, and okay, great. But then the downer on that whole thing is that Luke is still going to turn out to be this decrepit old grumpy asshole, and Grogu's going to die.
Titty milk.
Who drinks titty milk, and Grogu's going to die in the temple, right? So there's a wet blanket that's still kind of hanging over, the great storytelling.
And then there's also the question of who saved Grogu at the temple during Order 66.
Right, which I think is going to be explored in season 3 going forward. But that's what you touched on, the retconning that they want to do.
Yeah.
There's actually a synopsis that was put out on the episode with Ahsoka, where Anakin's Force Ghost comes up, and this was not shot, but there's somebody's kind of leaked this as this would have been potentially the conversation, and it might be the beginning of her series. So this scene may show up in the beginning of her series. But Anakin is there saying, "No, do not train the child. My son will train the child. You've changed much, but there's much more work to do," and kind of hinting that it's going to be Ahsoka that kind of changes the timeline, wiping out the last 3 movies, basically.
I like how they basically have expanded what the Force does.
Yeah.
To just fuck
There's
the
no
rest
limit. And you can bring people back from the dead. You can heal people. I mean, it's getting a little crazy. A little crazy.
It'd be like if somehow someone did a shitty reboot of, I don't know, Stargate or something. Yes. And then they were out of nowhere, O'Neill comes out and goes, "Hey, apparently we could change the timeline with the gate, and these movies totally didn't happen."
Yeah, that's. And there's actually much of a civil war apparently at Lucasfilms. I don't know if you watch Doomcock. He's ruling.
Heard about him.
Yeah, he's a Hollywood insider. He has a YouTube channel where he's wearing a mask to hide his identity. But he talks a lot about that, the civil war that's taking place within Star Wars right now. And Kathleen Kennedy, who's the woman kind of responsible for taking over the franchise, is pissed that Luke Skywalker made an appearance in The Mandalorian. It was kind of a hush-hush secret. Nobody really knew. But yeah, they because they want to kill the past. They do not want these stories going forward. They want to, everybody should focus on the Mary Sue, Rey, and all the new people that nobody cares about.
Skywalker, really, Rey Palpatine.
Yeah, that's fucking sad. But anyway, that's what's going on there. Definitely recommend it. And Amos, if you watch Wonder Woman, the second one, watch the first one. The first one is good. The second one is shit, but we can definitely talk about that. And how what you said about how in the beginning it came out on Rotten Tomatoes as super fresh. And I think it's just dropped into the rotten category at this point.
Okay. Quick before we go. 10K Rum. Coupon code for soap. Go to Tactical Soap. Get 10% off if you use the coupon code 10K Rum. Check out our Subscribe Star. Subscribestar.com/shitlord-preachers to subscribe and pledge and support the show on a monthly basis for as little as $1 a month. You can also leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to us on podcasting platforms. And we, of course, appreciate everyone's support. Anything quick before we go, Brooke?
No, it's been 5 fucking hours, man. I'm ready for bed.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna eat a little something and probably just take a nap.
Yeah, you deserve it, bro. You deserve it.
But anyways, yeah, thank everyone for joining us. Of course, we'll be, of course, back at the same time. We're back to Sundays again. I know we had a little shift in there, but I changed my work schedule so we could be back to our normal Sundays. We could be extra tired on Sundays, but Sunday, 11 o'clock Central Time, right here on the channel. We will see everyone, of course, next week.